Hello and welcome back to those of you who've been before. Well, I can't believe the difference between this week and last week, when I'm sure it was last week I sat in the garden talking to you because it was so beautiful and I had the parasol up to shade me from the sun. And this week I've just been out with the dogs and it's blowing a gale. I'm wearing a thick Farewell woolen sweater. I wore a wax jacket over the top, had to hold on to my hat, and it's just so different. We don't seem to have those between seasons like we used to do. There's gradual change from one season to another. It seems to be hot, cold, dry, wet, without the gradual sort of ease into another season. But I like wearing heavy jumpers, so it was still a great walk this morning, picking up conkers for some little children I know. And yeah, and usually I prep ahead of doing these videos, and I didn't know what to do this week, and I'd been thinking about it for a few days, and I thought about a few subjects, and then I decided I would actually just talk in general, pretty much from experience and from my knowledge and reading that I've done, to help women who may be heading towards perimenopause. But what I'm going to talk about helps those heading towards perimenopause, in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. It's really quite useful, I would say, across the board. But I think for any female, say from the age of 35, because the perimenopause does seem to be kicking in earlier for many people nowadays, or for many women, I should be specific. And I think being aware that change is coming, and to what you perhaps could do in the way of eating, your diet and your lifestyle, to help that smooth transition and actually increase your perhaps health potential for those latter years, because things do start to go a little bit on a slippery slope quite often. So I want to go through a few of my sort of top tips. There is no great detail here, but to give those people, younger ladies, some awareness, if they haven't thought about this yet, then these are some of the things you could do which would actually support you now. I mean, just face it, women tend to be incredibly busy. Many hold down jobs as well as bring up families, and that is actually a huge demand, and women often neglect themselves, and really and truly they need to put themselves first. So they are able to do all these things and really support their families. You're going to see Luna now, who wants some kisses. She wants kisses. Mwah. Thank you, darling. So let's start with nutrition. I'm a nutritional therapist, for those of you who don't know, and so of course I'm going to start with nutrition. And it is foundational for our health throughout our lives, not just at this time. Other lifestyle factors like exercise are incredibly important, and the science that's coming out about that impact on our general health, our mental health, our physical health, our longevity is really exciting, because there's so much more within our control than we ever realised, say in my mother's time. So if we start with diet, the first thing is the Western world diet is a bit of a challenge. We are exposed to so many products in the supermarkets, on the market, that we've lost sight in many ways of what is that good English? What real food is all about. And some people, when I have conversations with people, often people say, I eat a very healthy diet. And I have to actually ask them to clarify what that means to them, because there's so many different ideas about what a healthy diet is, and some people say I eat very well, and then they tell me what they eat, and there's a lot of processed food involved. And that's what I'm going to suggest as my first recommendation for getting ready for a long healthy life at any stage in your life, is to look at reducing, if not eradicating, highly processed foods. I mean, some processing like tinned beans or tinned tomatoes, that's fine, because they are based on old methods of preservation to take us through the winter months. But a whole meal that's being processed, where there might be vegetable oils in there, added ingredients that you wouldn't, if you read the label, if there's an ingredient on there you wouldn't have in your kitchen because it's something odd, I would leave it on the shelf, because it's gone too far with the processing. And what happens with processing is some of the goodness can be removed by the processing. Some of the foods that go in there can be altered so that they're not so recognised by the body, and therefore if the body doesn't recognise it, doesn't know what to do with it, it can become a problem and just a clogging up mass in the body, for simple sort of descriptive detail. And this includes things like vegetable oils, so many products. I mean, I picked up a jar of pesto today and it has sunflower oil in it. I'd rather not buy the sunflower oil. Some of the processing of oils is really not health promoting. Extra virgin olive oil or virgin olive oil, I think there's so much evidence about the quality or the benefits of that, but the quality is important still. So there's the additives, there's sodium, which, you know, yes, we do need salt, but often it's rock salt, which is not the same as sea salt or the Celtic salt, the Malden salt, the Himalayan salts, which have minerals in them. The rock salt is more damaging to us. So it's those cheaper ingredients are added in, and often sugars are added in to make it more palatable, particularly if it's a low-fat product. They take fats out, they add sugars in to make it more palatable. And even if it says low sugar, it might have a sugar alternative that may also be not health promoting. So reducing those processed foods in your diet, I think, is one of the key factors. Doing that alone can make a big difference to how you go through those menopausal years and out the other side. It can make the whole journey much easier. So reducing processed foods. And as I've said in previous videos, when you make a change, start with one meal. Focus on perhaps your first meal of the day. What processed foods are you eating at breakfast? Is it a cereal that's been processed? Look at what you could have instead of that. Maybe you could have some eggs, a nice omelette. Maybe some berries with yogurt and a few nuts. Look at some alternatives. And when you look for alternatives, you want to look for whole foods, real food, food that nature intended. So increasing vegetables is always a good start for most people. Most people are low on their vegetable intake, so that's a good starting point. Fruits, particularly berries, are particularly good, and starting with those to help swap out those processed foods. So I think that's number one, really, is being very aware of how much in the way of processed foods you're eating. You might want to start a little food diary and just see what's being made from fresh or partial. I mean, I prepare ahead because I don't have time either, but I avoid processed foods. Occasionally they'll crop up because, you know, life is what it is, but very rarely. My second thing on nutrition or diet is the eating window. And again, I think many mothers, I met one lady, bless her, her diet was absolutely appalling, and I was reading her diet sheet and thinking, very bit weird kind of meals this lady's having. And I had an idea of what it was, but I thought I'll question her on it. And she was eating the leftovers on her children's plates. But each of her children, I think she had 3 children, she was preparing different meals for each child. And rather than prepare something for herself, she just finished off what they didn't eat. And I have to admit, it was the most inappropriate thing for me to say, but it just struck me, why are you being a human dustbin? Why do you not deserve your own nutritious meal? And it did hit home, actually. It was, yeah, as I say, not really the most appropriate thing to say. But thankfully it hit home. She wasn't offended at all. She hadn't realised, and it just brought that truth of the matter, that she was feeding herself with leftovers from other people's plates and not giving herself nutrition. Changed everything for her. I'm going to have to plug my battery in, so excuse me a minute, I'm going flat here. Won't be mo. Alright, hopefully the battery will be okay. Sorry about that. So yes, I was just finishing off a story about a lady who was eating very oddly, but also I found many parents eat constantly, many women eat constantly, partly because they're grabbing food where they can, because they're not settling down to eat a full meal for them. You know, it's about getting everything ready for everybody else. So the eating window is quite important. A period of fast, which is overnight really, I'm talking about a 12-hour fast on a regular basis, where you finish your meal in the evening and then leave 12 hours before you have your next meal the next day, because that can really help the body do all those activities that it does, like clearing up the waste, repairing tissue, and digestion it won't need to use all that energy on digestion, and it can help rebalance the body, and recalibrate basically. And there's more to fasting than that, but I think as a starting point for anybody heading towards the perimenopause, that would be a good thing to do, is make sure you have a 12-hour eating window and a 12-hour fasting window, and be aware of things like having a cup of hot chocolate at night with milk or with a biscuit, because that counts. Your digestion will have to kick in to digest that. So be aware of having that late nights before bed snack and just putting it forward so that you have a gap. It helps the digestion as well before going to bed. I'm going to have a quick sip, and I think Luna's going to get back up again. Pop it there. So yeah, eating window is a good one to focus on too. The next tip is exercise, and the amount of science coming out around exercise at the moment, I think is really good, it's strong, and a lot of it makes sense. But what again I found with many women I've worked with, they are very aware that exercise is important, and this is particularly when they're going through perimenopause and they're aware that weight is creeping up, and sometimes postmenopause as well, of course, which can happen, but they're doing a lot of aerobic exercise, and some aerobic is really good. The VO2 max, the volume of oxygen that we take in, is a good measure, and there seems to be quite a lot of understanding around that and how that relates to longevity. So I could perhaps talk about that another time. It's not my field of expertise, but it's incredibly interesting and incredibly relevant, particularly to my aims in life, which is about living a long, healthy life. So exercise is really important, but doing back-to-back aerobic classes can be detrimental. It can raise the cortisol levels. It means we could lay down more fat rather than control our weight, and it can deplete us rather. So we want to get a balance, and so I would say, from what I understand, I do have a qualification as a gym instructor, which I did over 20 years ago, and I've never used it. So my info's out of date, but I do like to listen in on what's going on now. But my understanding is that if you did aim for 2 days or 2 sessions of aerobic exercise a week, and then have a couple of sessions a week of something that's more a resistance exercise, so more something like weightlifting, because it's really important for us as we get older that we maintain our muscle mass, that we have good strength and power in our muscles, because it's that if we lose it and we can't get out of a chair, we can't bend down and put our socks on, that is when we have problems as we get older. And of course also when we do sort of resistive exercise, we can help stress the bones, and basically our bones they remodel all the time. They break down and rebuild throughout our lives, but there tends to be a greater propensity towards breakdown after the age of, I think it's still considered 25. There's always variation on these, and we need to maintain that bone mass as well, because there's a lot of osteopenia which is heading towards osteoporosis, which is the sort of brittle, fragile bones. In in the Western world, particularly with females, also with men, of course, but particularly with females. So we do need to be careful and observant, and our diets are relevant here. Some foods will deplete our mineral levels, and it's more than calcium that we're looking at, but the exercise itself can trigger the bone rebuilding to occur. So some resistive exercise, a focus on strength and building muscle, as well as maintaining, could be really relevant to many women. Again, we kind of put ourselves on the back burner whilst looking after families, holding down jobs, running homes, and the rest of it. So exercise is important. Finding time or a method that fits in with your lifestyle, but sometimes giving yourself a priority. You know, if you're running children around to all of their activities, that's fantastic. Maybe join up with another parent and share that, so that you have that time to do your own exercise if another parent's taking your children to something else, and then next week you do it. And if you're sharing with a few people, hopefully you can all get in a period of exercise for yourselves, if it's a challenge, of course. So exercise, very important. The next thing I've spoken about before is sleep. Again, this is another big challenge for many people. There's so much in our modern day lives that requires our attention, whereas the more simple life of getting up and, you know, where do you get your food from, preparing food, eating it, sleeping, keeping warm, that kind of had less demands in some respects, the changing of demands, let's say. And of course, with electric light and gadgets, etc., we tend to stay up much later, whereas we probably, in days gone by, we would have had candlelight and we would have gone to bed, because there's a certain amount you can do by candlelight. So getting great sleep, and it's quality sleep as well. And I think it's really, the main thing I would say to focus on is having enough time in bed to be able to get that quality, to have the right period of sleep, and to therefore facilitate the quality of sleep. So I would look for between 7 and 9 hours sleep per night, going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time every day of the week, not just during the week but also weekends. Slight variation is fine, but if it's a big variation, the body clock can get out of whack. So trying to find a way to do that, and it may be that some things don't get done, but maybe somebody might be able to help get things done. It's so difficult, everybody's so individual and has different circumstances, and I've had clients who've said to me, oh, I can't do that because, and my husband wouldn't like this, or my children don't do that. I'm thinking, well, maybe they would if you asked them, and that's something we need to remember, is to ask for help where we can. So sleep, I think is really important. That's one of my main things at the minute. I've changed it. Those of you who may have watched me before know that I've changed my eating around, so I'm eating a larger meal in the middle of the day and something lighter in the evening, so I can get to bed earlier and get the sleep I need, because I've been remiss on that and I haven't been having the right amount of sleep, and I'm feeling it. So that's I'm getting better. And it is for me as well. It's little changes, and I can't do something perfectly overnight. I need to do small changes and build up and build the habit like everybody else. My final area, well, maybe not the final, but area that I think is important is our stress management as well. And this can come in very closely with sleep, because they impact each other. If you don't get enough sleep, you're likely to feel stress more readily, and if you have a lot of stress, you might not get enough sleep. So they do interact and impact each other. So being aware of the stresses around you, things that you respond to, physical stresses. For me, I know I've hurt my hip again, and I need to rest it, and I'm not getting enough downtime to rest it. It's a problem. I need to find that time. I need to do something about that, to rest it so that it will repair properly, because it's taking a long time. Mental stresses, emotional stresses, being aware of those things that trigger us. And on some occasions it could be we could look at that stress in a different way. It might be that we can remind ourselves that words needn't hurt us if we don't allow them to. Somebody's opinion is their opinion, and if it's their opinion on us, it's not necessarily our opinion of ourselves or our knowing of ourselves. So we don't have to take somebody's insults or criticisms on board. And sometimes people lash out through their own pain. And since I've understood that, it's been much easier to put aside some cruel things that people might say. So there's that. But of course, there are some people who are intentionally trying to make your life miserable, trying to change those situations. I think, you know, if we can change something, all to the good. And emotional stress, it's a hard one. A bereavement, you need to allow yourself time to grieve, and I know that, and I know what helped me when my mother passed was moving house helped me, because I didn't have the relationship between the home and speaking to my mother, phoning her up every Saturday and having a long conversation with her. When I was in a different environment, that thought didn't trigger in the same way, and it helped me get over the grief. And of course I still miss her, but it was a turning point for me to get out of that kind of, I think the Americans call it a funk, and I was definitely in a place where the joy wasn't quite there. And now I can remember my mother without feeling that depth of despair. And I talk to her a lot, even now, so it might be a bit nutty actually, but who knows. I get comfort from it. I just like to do that. So they're the areas I think are worthy of some attention if you're heading towards the perimenopause. Start now. The earlier you start, the better your transition through those menopausal years should be. Now, everybody has different conditions. If you've got a health issue, you need to keep that in mind and speak to your doctor before making changes. So if you do have a health issue or a concern, then please do get advice before doing anything drastic. Simple little changes generally for most people aren't a problem, but any doubt, see your medical professional, please. And for those of you who may already be in perimenopause or menopausal, as in postmenopausal, make these changes if you haven't already. Think about which one would serve you best and take one thing at a time. It's much easier to do that. And the final thing I wanted to finish with is an area I am not qualified to speak on, and that is HRT. But it's clear that those the bioidentical HRT can be beneficial to many women, and I'm not on it. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I haven't had a need for it, put it that way. But whether my bone density is up to scratch, I don't know. I've not had a DEXA scan. I know when I weigh myself on my bioimpedance scales, it's staying consistent, so which is a good thing. But it doesn't really tell me what my bone density is. It just tells me a certain consistency of how it was however many years ago. But yes, that might be a consideration for you, but that is something your medical professional should be able to advise you on. And for many women, that can be incredibly beneficial. Now, I have an interest in the blue zones, the areas around the world where people live to 100 readily without health issues, and I have tried to find out whether there's been any study on menopause with these ladies in these groups. I wondered how they go through that transition. Do they have all the problems that most of us have? And And if not, what is it that they're doing? Is it purely the fact that it's a more natural way of life? I'd be really interested to know that. If anybody has any info on that or has heard anything, I haven't been into it in huge detail, but it's something I'm really fascinated by. Please share that in the comments. I'd love to know. So that's it for this week. I hope this may be of benefit to you at whatever stage you are going through. And if you know someone who may be at the early stages of perimenopause, or may be concerned about it, please share this video with them. The sooner they get started in taking positive steps in their diet, their nutrition, and their lifestyle factors, the easier it will be for them, and hopefully it should promote a longer, healthier life. That's what I'm hoping to share with you. So thank you for joining me today. Please like and subscribe if you wish to, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.